I feel a little silly after hearing from Kamran, introducing him and talking about all his accomplishments. But there's so much more he can share with us. And I'm not going to go through his impressive resume because you all know, and it's in your booklet, and you can Google him, and we know he's impressive. But just a couple of quick things that I learned that I did not know. And I've known Kamran and his wife for many, many years through Mariam, through another friend, Farshad Rastegard, and Relief International. So global high-tech entrepreneur, co-founded 10 companies, had 6 exits. 3 of them were unicorn IPOs. I did not know what unicorn was when Mahbub told me, and I'm dumb enough that I was like, oh, you mean unicorn, the little horsey with the thingy on top? I did not know, and then I learned more, and the unicorn we're talking about is money, lots of money. Unicorn IPOs that Kamran was involved with has a total market cap of over $8 billion. For 15 years, he was chairman of Global Catalyst Partners, global VC investments in the US, Japan, China, India, Israel, and Singapore. But I think what makes Kamran uniquely different is his underlying vision for global philanthropy, a determination to make a difference with education and empowerment of women and young people in some of the most remote corners of the world. I know he's very uncomfortable, like I'm talking about him, I can just tell, but I've got one more sentence and I'm gonna hand him the microphone. Kamran Jun, thank you for your conviction, for your contributions, for your investments, and you have to look at me for this one, for your generous heart. Thank you so much.
I think you should first hear the talk and decide whether you want to clap or whatever. You don't know. The last could be the worst, and in this case, very well, it might end up to be. I know you're all tired, and I'm kind of long-winded. I have a reputation for talking too much, so if you need to leave here at 4:30, somebody please let me know 5 minutes in advance. Otherwise, you might be here till 4:30 a.m. So. As I was listening to all of the wonderful discussions, and I learned a lot, one of the most amazing things about any of the iBridges events is how much I learned as a participant. And I was glued to all of the talks that were coming out, and it just was very special, very fantastic experience. And before I start my talk, I want to mention 2 other individuals that probably were not mentioned. One is Mariam Khosawani, founder of IAW, another one of my wonderful, wonderful heroes that I look up to. So Mariam John, proud of you and love very much yourself and everything you have done. Another person, I don't know, is Siyavush in here, Siyavush Alamuti. I don't see him. Well, he was around earlier. Siyavush was a CTO of Intel Communication, and one of the God knows how many patents he has, and one of the gods of industry. And I didn't know that he was coming or whatever. We should have had him give amazing lectures, but another amazing soul and great brains. Where do we go from here? And what is the future of our species as human beings? Firuzjan talked a lot about our hunger to go and find life outside our tiny little dust of a planet. Any astronaut who has gone out there, our common friend Anousheh, she said that when she was going up, she wanted to put a flag of US and flag of Iran on her space suit. And there was a lot of controversy about it, that flag of Iran and flag of US being on the same suit. And as you might know, she paid, I can't remember, 20 million bucks or something to Russian space agency, not US or Iran, and got her training in Kazakhstan and became an astronaut and went up there. And she was telling the story that the first thing she wanted to do was go and find the country she was born in, Iran. And she kept looking, and she couldn't find it. You know why? When you look from up there, there is no line between Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Turkey, Iraq, Russia. No lines. These are all imaginary. She tried to find the United States. Guess what? There are no lines between US, Canada, Mexico. We are all the same. And any leader, any corrupt leader who tries to divide us, to separate us, whether he is an old man, a political leader, or an old man, religious leader. And have you ever thought about why is it that the power structure is handled by old men? Think about that. How did that happen? We have this thing about respect for elders. That's one of the most unnatural things out there. Do you think the old lion gets any respect? The old elephant gets any respect? The old tiger? We have, through our religious beliefs, in many of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, have said it was because of the fault of the woman that we were kicked out of the heavens. Just think about that. Nature is men are chasing women. Male dog is chasing female dogs. Male cat, male lion, male elephant. And all of a sudden there was this figure, Adam, that was pure, innocent, had no interest, and Eve had to come and seduce it, and therefore Eve needs to be covered and needs to be controlled and be subordinate to the man. Where did these ideas come from? How could they have any meaning? How could they have any following? Well, let me tell you what. The world is changing. In evolution of our species, for the first time, it is changing through disruption, through innovation economy. If we go back through previous economies, we had agricultural economy, industrial economy, knowledge economy, but all of that is past. Knowledge has very little value. The future is innovation economy. What is the difference between knowledge economy and innovation economy? If you memorize something and have a lot of knowledge, you get between 3 to maybe 7 minutes advantage over somebody with a mobile phone, smartphone, and access to broadband, who can do a Google search and knows how to do the Google search, connect the dots, and have that knowledge. You don't believe me? I will gladly pick up any field. I will go and give me 5 to 7 minutes. I will figure out the answers to the questions so you don't have to memorize it yourself. In innovation economy, knowledge has no value. Ideas have no value. It's all about implementation, execution, disruption, collaboration, propensity for change, celebration of change, courage, overcoming your fears of failure, and new outlook to the world failure. Innovation economy is disruption. Now, there is this pyramid, if you can picture that. Every task we do, we can do it manually, we can use a mechanical tool, an electromechanical tool, use microelectronics, use software, or the top of the pyramid is algorithmic content. Just remember this pyramid. Every task we do, you can do it in each one of these with different tools. Let's look at transportation. Manual transportation is me walking. It takes forever to get somewhere. Mechanical is having a wheel and a chariot that a horse or a cow pulls it a little bit faster. Electromechanical is cars. Microelectronics is cars with circuits in there, microcontrollers, a little bit of navigation. Software gives you all the power. You just type in your address, where you want to go, you talk to your car, it has your contact list, has your points of interest. But what is the highest value in the car? It's algorithmic content. The highest value company in US is Uber. Doesn't have any manual, mechanical, electromechanical, microelectronics, only software and algorithmic content. I need a car. It goes and looks at thousands of other drivers, who is available, how far away, are there any traffic jams between that person and me, and gives me immediately an estimate of when he or she would be there to pick me up and how much the cost would be. And has higher value than General Motors, plus Ford, plus Chrysler. But is it the highest value transportation company in the world? Uber only has 93 million users. Didi has 550 million. How many of you have heard of Didi? You do, good. Who is the founder? Is it an old man? It's a young lady. Young lady. How did that happen? Uber last month, or 2 months ago, bought Careem. How many of you are familiar with Careem? Quite a few. What, over $3 billion? Was Careem based in Silicon Valley? The first unicorn out of Middle East. What is happening? In innovation economy, you use your brains and you use access to broadband. You manipulate zeros and ones in an algorithmic way, and you make money. And as the world moves forward, this pyramid starts to become this. Eventually, it becomes an inverted pyramid. I was lucky in 1980. I met this crazy professor from Carnegie Mellon, Dr. Ron Rohr, and he high level told me this very basic transition. I sat down and I drove this pyramid, and every company I started followed this trend. 10 companies, each one of them played a major role in moving from one level to another to another. I didn't have a lot of muscle. I didn't have the looks of a CEO. As I was looking for money, as I said before, I was 26. I needed to raise $1.8 million to get my MVP, my minimum viable product, the proof of concept. Imagine, 1980, you go and tell investors, give me 1.8 million to go and develop the prototype, and we will see if it works or not. If it did, you can give me more money. Try to sell that to the investors. But because we are in innovation economy, today, if I wanted to do that, I would need less than $50,000. Why? Because of that little I. iBridges, that little I just doesn't mean Iran. It just doesn't mean I as an agent of change. It doesn't mean just international. It also means broadband. In 1980, I had to spend that money to buy very expensive computers. Apple had just started, and Apple I was just starting to sell. We didn't have servers, we didn't have cloud, we didn't have freeware, shareware, all of that. Today, because of that little I, we can do the things very differently. And if it is less than $50,000 in developing world to start a company, you can imagine in developed world, 50,000. In developing world, $5,000, $10,000. You could go and get a prototype made for your product because it's all software and rearrangement of zeros and ones. And when we come to rearrangements of zeros and ones, all that matters is brains. And men and women are equal. When it is industrial economy, whoever has bigger muscles can do factory work more. But when it is brain, men and women are equal. And actually, I have a theory. I believe women have significant advantage. Is that a bullshit statement? Let me tell you a simple story. When I was a kid and I was growing up, all I had to do was be a good boy and get good grades. And maybe it was okay if I did okay in sports, which I was horrible in. My sister, who was only 3 years older than me, she had to be a good girl. She had to get good grades. She had to take care of me. She had to take care of my younger brother. She had to help my mom with shopping. And she had to help my mom with cooking. Imagine the pressure on her. What happened to her? She learned multitasking. She learned algorithmic thinking, prioritization. Do I go and help my younger brother, my older brother? Do I do shopping, or do I do my homework, or do I help my mom with cooking? From very early stage. That's where the future is going to change. And guess what? Because I know this, with every cell in my body, I look at this and I say, why not go and change the world? Bring electricity everywhere, bring broadband everywhere, set up clouds everywhere, set up access to vertical data, whether it is weather data, whether it is health data, whether it is pandemic data, agricultural data, fluid access to that. Let's make this be human rights. Access to all of this so that the young boys and girls have a chance to take power away from old men who have screwed up the world left and right for a few thousand years. Is it crazy? Absolutely not. What is my goal? Help create 10 million innovation jobs in 10 years in 38 selected countries in Africa, in Middle East, in Central Asia, Southeast Asia. These countries were carefully selected because they all have a huge population of young people. All these countries have very high unemployment rate. Almost all of them are highly corrupt. Old men in charge do not do much for their citizens. Many of them don't treat their women very well. Unemployment rate above 25%, some of them as high as 50%. Now, if you go to UN, if you go to World Bank, you see these young people are seen as potential problems because they see unemployment creates headaches, creates gang members, creates terrorists, creates major problems. You talk to me, I look at them as amazing assets. Why? Because old men don't like change. Young boys and girls love change. They thrive on change. And they have the tools. How many times you hear from my generation that they say, oh, we don't know what our young kids are doing. They are doing this amazing stuff and they're multitasking and they're giving me headache. They seem to be doing this thing and that thing and that thing and whatever. If you live with young people as I do, as I travel all over the world, where do I get my knowledge? I spend a lot of time with young people. And I see that the world through their lens. And all I see is assets, amazing assets. And the countries which have more young people have bigger assets. All we have to do is bring them electricity, broadband, local cloud, and fluid, open, low-cost access to vertical data. As crazy as it might be, Nader and Haller know I've been pitching World Bank. Thank God they appointed the former Vice President of Africa, Makhtar Diop, to be, for the first time, a new position, Vice President of Digital Infrastructure. And guess what? There is a new project brewing, started from Vice President of World Bank for Africa, Vice President of World Bank for MENA, who later on became Vice President for Africa, called the Moonshot Project. And it has spread to Vice President of World Bank for Central Asia, and I haven't been kept in touch. Next week I will be in Washington. I will find out. I would not be surprised if soon we would have a moonshot project for the world, for World Bank. Do you know what Moonshot Project says? By year 2030, every human being on this planet should have access to electricity, to broadband, to local cloud, and to vertical data. Now, as I travel, how many more minutes, by the way, I have? 1 minute?
5 more plus 5.
Okay. So, you go into creating 10 million innovation jobs. How would one go about that? In our first huge global initiative that our foundation had. By the way, my wife and I gave all of our money to our foundation 23 years ago, in 1996. It was called Schools Online. We worked in 6,400 schools in 36 countries between 1996 to 2003 to set up, donate computers, set up computer labs, bring broadband to these 6,400 schools, pay for it, and trained over 10,000 teachers globally. We wanted to start the internet revolution all over the world. But to do this, and then in 2003, we merged it with Relief International, so it became a gigantic organization, and we could work in refugee places, in camps all over the world. By 2009, we had over 2,000 employees in 25 countries. Our annual budget was $45 million. But I learned from that. That's not the way we are doing this project, which is so much bigger. In this project, we decided we go and find who is doing what, where, and go and help them. Connect the dots, and give them the ideas, and get them to learn how to enable this happen. So I'm advisor to something like 50 different organizations. Some informally, some hidden, some formally. Work with them to get them to see different. Whether it is 500 startups, whether it is Unreasonable Institute, Seed Stars, whether it is, all these different tech hubs in different parts of the world. These technology hubs like Mars that you see in here, I was here, when was it, manager, was it 2001 or 2?
No, it was 2005 or 2006.
6 that it started. I was here when they were starting. Manager invited me to come and give a talk, and I said, what a great thing. So these tech hubs are moving out of Silicon Valley to Canada. Do you know how many tech hubs exist in Africa today? Take a guess. The Africa that many of us know is backward, doesn't know anything. The youth are really screwed. The Africa I know is completely different. 600 technology hubs like this exist all over Africa. I've personally visited over 100 of them. And I'm advisor to many of them. And guess what? The young people over there are all learning the top of that pyramid, the software and algorithmic content. You all have seen that Sophie robot that I guess has been World Economic Forum introduced it a few years ago, and it has become citizen of a few countries. All of that has all the facial expressions. Something like 20% of that was developed at an AI lab. Guess where? Addis Ababa. Did you know? In Addis Ababa, I had the honor to go and meet. I have the pictures, the videos, I can show you this. The Africa today has the chance to be the next China. And it's going to be, maybe even bigger than China, because it's full of young people, very hungry for knowledge. That is moving up. And with the price of the new smartphones are being introduced in 2020, less than $50. Imagine the new world that we can build. Put more young people in charge, more women in play to go and do what matters, what is good for us, not what these stupid, macho-driven, fake leaders who think dropping bombs is sign of power, and you go, as we say in Farsi, پشت سرشون پخ میکنی همه میترسن. It's the bullshit macho power. The answer to terrorism is not, I'm going to kill all of them and all of their relatives. That is a war crime. Only stupid leaders think that way and say that. We have a chance to change the world for the better. And there are 50 organizations that we are working with, helping us, doing some really cool stuff. I will just talk about one of them and end the conversation. At Unicef Innovation Labs, I've had the honor and the pleasure to be their advisor for the last 7-8 years. And we are right now creating a $300 million fund that would invest in 100 tech hubs, each one of them $3 million. But $3 million doesn't go to one company, doesn't go to two companies. It goes to over 100 companies. We want to enable the young entrepreneurs who go through the classes to have $10,000, $20,000, $5,000 to put their idea in practice. Ideas have no value, but if they put it to practice, figure out a minimum viable product that customers need, that's great. And we can do amazing, cool stuff. At Stanford University, we are doing some really amazing stuff. We are finishing the agreement, signing it this next week. And after that, I could be more open about that. But for the first time, we are bringing the ability of 50 distinguished entrepreneurs who could take a course at Stanford and pay a huge amount of money per year. We have a plan to make that number be 50,000. 50,000 share the knowledge that Stanford had to create Silicon Valley all over the world and give certificates of entrepreneurship to everyone, all those 50,000. We can discuss it more, hopefully in a couple of weeks after we have finalized everything and we can be public about it. So, as Firuz John said, never ever think impossible is impossible. And guess what? If we put our intentions in a positive way to do something good, all the wills of universe start to come together to help us make that happen. Some people call it luck. Some people call it serendipity. My dear friend Deepak Chopra says it's called synchrodestiny. And if you go back and think, why did Zardosht talk about Pendaranik? Think well. And why did Buddha say your intentions matter? They do matter. If you don't believe it, read Heisenberg principle, the observer effect, and you will see at subatomic level, there is scientific proof that we can affect our universe. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Love you all.
Thank you, Kamran. Is this working?
Okay.
So time for how many questions do we have time for? Quick questions, 1 or 2. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Over there.
Thank you, iBridges, for bringing such a nice environment. To bringing us from Iran, actually, for the second time we're here. I only have some kind of suggestion, if it's possible, to implement it for next iBridges, maybe. There is a good bridge between, Iranian descent over here in, US and Canada or North America. But mainly, many of our colleagues in Iran, they are having, this kind of problems, and they need actually mentorship and such an environment to connect. If it's possible to conduct next iBridges, maybe nearby Iran, in countries in Middle East or maybe in Turkey, in order to bring many more, colleagues from Iran, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Yes, we thought about that, and when we selected Barcelona in December of 2016, we went to Spanish government. Just so you would know as a background, in Berkeley, at iBridge, first one in Berkeley, we were able to convince State Department to give us 15 visas to bring CEOs of high-tech companies from Iran to US, and over 700 people came at Berkeley to meet with them, and then we took them to Washington and introduced them to some members of Congress who were interested, and that was a good time. Next, we had discussions with the German government, and we got the permission. We brought 350 high-tech entrepreneurs from Iran to Berlin, and CNN sent their cameras over there, BBC sent their cameras there. The first day, the whole thing was going on. Over 71 different media organizations were there, from New York Times to Washington Post, every big thing, Wall Street Journal, everybody had representative there. And we tried to help with showing the world who Iran is and what the potential is. By the time iBridges for Barcelona came, we were thinking, let's select a place that is easier to get visas. And we got permission from Spanish government for 700 visas. But around 300 max came from Iran because, as we all know, without getting involved in politics, there are certain extremist groups within Iran that think if the power is removed from the hands of old men to young men and women, it might be threatening to their base. So even though this was not expressly discussed, it was boycotted. Many of our speakers were told that they should not come. If they come, they will be arrested. Many of the people canceled out. And it also coincided with the election of another crazy old man in the United States. And we said, the world has changed. We went from building bridges between two adversaries to create a contract, an agreement that was very promising. That was step one under Obama administration. A lot of the things changed. Now we could all be very angry about it, and say what went wrong. We are all victims, but that's not our style. We say this shall pass also. The world is moving towards unification. Why? We started in cave. As cave people, our circle of trust was how many people? 20, 30. With first form of technology was agriculture technology. We created homes, villages, distribution of labor, barters economic system. Our circle of trust went to a few hundred people in a village. Then we invented the wheel, we invented the coin, and our circle of trust went to a few thousand in a town, a few tens of thousands in a city. Then we created country, more things, Uber country. And as we discussed about Anusha's thing, you don't need to be Einstein to figure out future after creation of Uber countries like United States, like EU, like African Union has 49 members. The next is United Planet of Earth. That's our destiny. We are moving towards that. Some see that, recognize that, and work together. Some want to take us back to dark ages. And I believe you cannot fight evolution of our humanity, and you could try as hard as you want to bring coal back, but when price of creation of electricity is 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour, and coal is 7-8 cents, you have a losing proposition.
Thank you, Kamran. Thank you all. Unfortunately, we really are out of time, and we've got a couple of more housekeeping items. I'd like to invite iBridges members, board members, to come up on stage. We have a little unexpected thing we have to do. And then I want to invite all the volunteers and board members on stage for a group photo. So just a few more things. And don't forget all the fun Tirgan festivities going on the next few days. So don't forget that. So I'm going to move out of the way for the other stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all the volunteers and our board members for the tireless hours that they put into setting up this conference. This conference was not easy. All of us have a million things to do, but it turned out fantastic. This is really great. And one particular person has been an incredible help and has been almost spending his 24 hours a day. I don't know what happened to his wife. Is she here? You didn't even introduce us to her. No, your wife. Anyway, so as a token of appreciation, we've been thinking about what to give him. And since we didn't have anything, I brought my bag here. I was going to give him my bag, but then they didn't like it. So anyway, I found this thing in there. It's a box of another cassette. Oh, wow. There. Thank you, Mahmoud. And thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll see you on the next conference. And please don't forget that we need your help. I think you wanted to?
To thank Asiye Jun for...
Oh, yeah, Asiye, yes. My God, yeah. I'll give you my bag if you want.